Greetings, Earthlings. Before I go any further, please like, share, and subscribe, plus turn on your transmitters or whatever they're called, notifications, so you'll know when my show is on, because I guess things aren't making sense, but I need you to help me to, make them make sense by doing that for me. Could you just do that?
Oh, you see, my patience is growing.
Thanks a lot. Anyway, I'm glad you're here for the Roseanne Barr podcast. It's a very, it's so exciting. I'm so excited. I have a great guest today who's also a great friend for many years, and she is the author of 3 books that I want to mention. One is called, her first book is called Transformation of America, and her second book is called Access Denied for Reasons of National Security. Yeah. And then her third book is a great timely book. It is about time, actually. And this is that time. It's called Time for Healing, and it's just a fantastic book for people who suffer from PTSD or trauma-based anything, which is all of the United States and the world, I guess. Everybody has PTSD, really. And how to heal from it. So she's just a great person, and anyway, I'll just introduce her so we can get to talking, because we love to talk. Cathy O'Brien. Hi, Cathy.
Hi, Roseanne. I'm so happy to be here. This is a wonderful opportunity to bring truth to light. You and I have such great conversations, and it's delightful to get to share them this time on your podcast.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
How long have we been talking about this podcast? I mean, it's been years. And I knew I had to build the infrastructure first, and I had to learn how to speak to humans, one-on-one.
Well, we've been friends for such a long time. We've been friends since 2008. I mean, it was great when we first met each other, and it was such an important event, too, on child sex trafficking in Hollywood. You're already an activist. You're already using your voice to be able to expose the criminal activity that was going on. And I was so happy to meet you and share that opportunity to bring truth to light. And we brought it to light, not only what the problem is, but the solution. Because we need to have a solution and let everybody know that no matter what in the world happens, no matter what trauma we experience, we can heal from it, reclaim our free thought, reclaim our inner peace,
Hallelujah.
Reclaim our joy, reclaim our birthright to live the life that we were meant to live, regardless of whatever abuse we might have experienced. So it was a great time meeting you then, and it's just grown and blossomed throughout the years since, and I'm so happy to be here.
We were always going, what would be the message? What would be the big message we could give? Because we, between us, bring years of experience in, breaking free of mind bindings, and in your case of MK Ultra mind control, as a victim of it under this government.
I think the biggest message that we could ever bring forth is one of hope and one of solutions, because people are being bombarded with trauma after trauma after trauma these days, very deliberately. Trauma is the basis of mind control, whether it's of an individual, a nation, or the world. The formula is the same. Trauma is the basis of it. And
why is that?
It's the way our brains respond to trauma. It's like the conscious mind freezes in fright and leaves the subconscious mind wide open to being easily led and manipulated. And the subconscious mind doesn't have any filters of being able to question or reason or critically analyze the information. It just takes information in, especially if that information is repetitive. And the controlled media is really good at that when we experience trauma, to be bombarding us with repetition. And once we understand that's how our brains respond to trauma, then we can safeguard ourselves going forward. Knowledge is our defense against mind control. And that's a really important thing for people to know these days, especially when we're being bombarded so hard with so much repetitive trauma.
Well, you yourself, these are the things I wrote down for how we could approach this interview. I mean, these are for me, my notes, but I talked to you about them. But I was like, well, would we enter the conversation with talking about you as victim to victor? That's one. Two, as someone who triumphed. Your story is the triumph of consciousness and of the human spirit. So those are two whole different subjects too. And then it's also the greatest love story that I've ever heard in my life. And I knew Mark Phillips, and it should be like it's beyond Gone with the Wind or any love story I've ever seen. And that it's about healing and how to heal from trauma, PTSD trauma, and what it does to us and how it fractures the consciousness and creates different, whatever words they use for it. We used to say altars, and then I started thinking about that word, altars.
Yeah. Yeah, it has a lot of satanic religious connotation to it, very deliberately. But there's a lot of crossover words like that. And I prefer to refer to it as compartmentalization.
I like that.
Yeah, because that kind of compartmentalization isn't like multiple personalities like they used to call it, because it's just one personality that gets shattered. It's who we are, gets shattered and compartmentalized in the brain. It's, again, the way the brain responds to trauma. We've been born with a defense mechanism where the neuron pathways of the brain actually shut down around the trauma, repress it, bury it in the mind, so the rest of the mind can develop and function normally as though nothing has happened. And we're dissociative of that trauma until those neuron pathways are triggered open for whatever reason and whatever purpose. But once it's triggered back open, then we start to remember those things that we experienced that were repressed. But that's just the way our brains respond to trauma. When we understand that, then we know, and we can deal with the beauty of the mechanism that we've been blessed with that capability, and yet not allow it to lay dormant and undermine the rest of our lives. Because if we don't deal with those childhood traumas, if we don't deal with repressed memory, then it undermines our
Everything.
Present. We can't let our past intrude on our present. We have too much to accomplish and too much love to live and too much truth to live to allow for that dark, negative, subconscious undermining of our daily life. So it's something we need to deal with.
Well, I like that you said that the highest thing we could do in our conversation is to awaken hope, or to bring hope, or talk about hope.
Yeah, I'm living proof that anybody can heal from any level of trauma or torture or sophisticated MK Ultra mind control programming, that we can face the reality of what in the world is going on, how we got this handful of dark energy force perpetrators manipulating our brilliant minds and lives. We don't need any of that. And when we realize that we have all the power, when we realize who we are inside and all that we've been given all along, then that's where we win. That's our victory. It's so important for us all to face the truth and start living the life that we're intended to live. We're all here for a purpose at this pivotal moment in humanity's history.
Man, it's a big deal, ain't it?
Yeah, it is.
Hell yeah.
you
It's
know.
so huge. Every hour, another layer of the onion peels off.
It
Every
does.
hour, I'm talking about like just information
Constant.
available. Yeah.
It is, and you're helping expose it, and I love the way you do it. You help people to see it and laugh at the absurdity of it, because it is absurd
Yeah.
that it's even going on. It's inexcusable that it is. We, the people, humanity, has all the power. We just forgot. We've been conditioned for generations to look outside ourselves to big government, big pharma, big tech, big cult to cult religion to tell us how to live our lives.
Did you say cult and occult
Yeah,
religion?
cult and occult religion using mind manipulation tactics, using mind control that manipulates us and keeps us in fear of living the lives that we're intended to live. And this is our time. It's our time to reclaim that inner strength, because our children are counting on us. Our children are targeted, and they need us to wake up to reality now, remember who we are, why we're here, reclaim that inner strength, and start protecting our children.
Your entire life was about protecting your child once you got free of slavery, right?
Yeah, it was. My own daughter was born into MK Ultra mind control, and I couldn't think to protect her any more than I could think to save myself. The kind of mind control that we were under was absolutely robotic and extreme. We were used on a White House Pentagon level, being trafficked right out of the Washington, D.C. swamp back before people even knew that child sex trafficking was an issue, before people even knew that MK Ultra mind control is an issue, before people even knew there was a swamp in Washington, D.C., you know. But there we were. And
The swamp knew there was a swamp.
yeah.
They always knew, right?
Yeah.
Is the swamp basically the same folk now as it was when you knew the swamp?
Absolutely. It's the same handful of perpetrators over and over again. They know no party lines, and it's a global effort that's going on. This new world order, Great Reset, is a global effort, and it doesn't care about national sovereignty anywhere in the world, and they certainly don't care about Democrat and Republican partisan politics here. You know, it's all one and the same. It's all about who cooperates with this New World Order slave society agenda and who opposes it.
And look how these people like go for it. Like, I mean, they are under, I'm just talking about the youth. They are totally under heavy duty lemming mind control. I mean, it's just so sad. They can't be, it's like as if they can't see how they're participating in their own demise. They can't see it.
They need to be able to see it and have the truth presented to them. And I think one of the greatest ways that anybody can start seeing it is to see us living our freedom, living our love, and continuing to bring that truth to light, because it's been going on a long time. They're being manipulated through the school system. They're being manipulated through the media, especially that, and being manipulated with the trauma that's being imposed on society. You know, again, once we understand the formula for mind control, we have a defense against it. And we need to understand that mind control is a sliding scale from the kind of torturous robotic mind control I experienced on a White House Pentagon level to information control. Because we all formulate our thoughts, our opinions, and ultimately our actions based on what we know. And we need to know that knowledge base has been deliberately altered for a long, long time. And it's what
And
they're
it's
doing.
not in our favor.
No, it's to make us compliant and to march to this new world order slave society agenda, where a handful of big guys make all the money and we do all the work. Those of us who survived to that point, we need to understand that we share this planet with very dark energy force perpetrators who are not like us, and they do not like us. And they are manipulating us by our fears, and they're targeting our children. They're going for a multi-generational conditioning aspect. What I'm familiar with is that this formula for mind control that's being imposed on a global population and on society came into the United States in the wake of World War II through Project Paperclip.
Yeah.
And that Hitler-Himmler research had found that trauma was the basis of mind control. There's no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while their brain is still forming. And they also found that after 3 generations, any belief system, knowledge base, any abuse base becomes autogenic in the brain after 3 generations. We pass that down, and it's just part of our thinking process. It's kind of like how language is passed down, or why doctors run in families or something like that. You know, it's just the way our brains work, and it becomes genetically encoded. So they're wanting to genetically encode the population for at least 3 generations to accept pedophilia. This has been going on a long time, and we're seeing it now. You know, this is like the 3rd generation, and it's why anybody's even tolerating the sexualization of our children. It's turning them into compliant, you know, little robots for this new world order. And when we understand that, and we understand our own mind-brain function, then we stop cooperating with our demise and start protecting our children.
That's a big one. It's so amazing to me that you have to explain that to mothers now.
Yeah, but you know, Mark Phillips, you know, you mentioned Mark.
Oh, yeah, we're getting to that now. Just a minute. Hold on. I got it all set up in my mind how. Okay, the next place I wanted to go with you is your own sexual abuse, because that's what set the tone for you to be sold into the MK Ultra program, right?
Right.
I wanted you to tell about that.
Okay, so I was born into a multi-generational incest-based family. My father was sexually abused and ritually abused. His mother was a prostitute and a witch. My mother was sexually abused, and her father was in intelligence, and he ran a Blue Masonic Lodge. That Blue Masonic Lodge is where all the local politicians hung out, where the law enforcement and people being corrupted and manipulated into strategic positions of influence in society. That, you know, we hear about that from the Masonic lodges, where they have the secrets, the secret society. Well, they had the secrets on mind control that were brought over through Project Paperclip. These secret societies, that is their secret, and it's one that we have a right to know and a need to know, and a real important reason to have to understand it. So my mother's sexual abuse included being trafficked to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. Well, by the time I was born into this multi-generational aspect, I was actually genetically born with a compliant attitude. So whether I had been sexually abused or not, I'd have been compliant. And I'd have gone, I was highly suggestible, easily led, even if I hadn't been abused. But I was abused, horribly abused. And my father's sexual abuse was, it happened in infancy. So I couldn't judge what he was doing was wrong. I didn't know any, you know, I mean, I was just an infant. But my brain knew what he was doing was wrong. And I was experiencing the pain and the suffocation of his abuse just the same. So my brain started compartmentalizing that memory, shutting down those neuron pathways, repressing that right from birth. So my brain was being compartmentalized right away. My father's sexual abuse extended into prostituting me out to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. And as a little toddler, I was being prostituted to some of the local politicians there. And when my father's sexual abuse extended into child pornography of me, all the way back then, he was caught sending child pornography through the U.S. mails, and approached by one of those local politicians that I'd been prostituted to, and told he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would agree to sell me into the CIA's MK Ultra mind control project, especially the sub-project, Project Monarch, which is the multi-generational project that was conducive to me since, my whole family was that way.
So it's kind of like Hitler and them, they got people to continue their studies.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
They
what
did
it is, right?
through the secret societies. And that local politician was Gerald Ford, and Gerald Ford went on to become the unelected president of the United States. So now we can
That
see.
reminds me of Boys Town, that whole thing, Boys Town, when they took over the whole government. Those guys that were, having little boy parties.
Yeah, they've been doing it my whole life that I know of, because these perpetrators, these criminals, don't trust each other either. So they hold each other by the blackmail, so to speak, and they film it. They covertly film the perversions and then hold them to it, And
Okay, now here's where I want to go. You were in that world, and you had no free thought. You were, being the best mom you could be with your daughter. So it was the darkest world where you didn't trust or couldn't trust nobody, and you just were so compartmentalized, you're walking around like a robot, okay? Thinking nobody is ever going to help me. Right? Ta-da, here comes Mark Phillips.
Yeah, well, we can jump ahead to Mark, because Mark was amazing. He's working the highest levels of intelligence, mind sciences, and he was working it to preserve the sanctity of free thought.
Oh, my God.
Because he knew that without free thought, there's no free will. With no free will, there's no soul expression. With no soul expression, we'd have no moral compass. We have no ability to stand up for the things we believe in. We have no ability to live our life's purpose or call on the strength of the human spirit, that infinite source of love and power that we all have within us, and the strength of the spirit. And that's what these perpetrators that I was exposed to throughout my MK Ultra victimization fear the most. Is the strength of the human spirit. They know that's where we live, and where it's where we win and where they lose. They know that that's the ultimate power, and they're scared of it. They can't stop it. They can't possess it. They can't do anything other than inhibit our ability to think, to express it. That's why they're using mind control. That's why we're experiencing the trauma after trauma, the mind manipulation that's going on right now, for ushering in what Adolf Hitler, George Bush, and Joe Biden term the New World Order, this great reset, this whatever we want to call it. It's a slave society agenda. And they're wanting to inhibit our ability to express soulfully, to be able to live the love we are, to reach out to each other with compassion, to be able to stand up and protect our children.
That's it, bingo.
And that's what Mark was seeing, and why he was so determined to study the mind sciences and see what he could do to preserve the sanctity of free thought. He was also studying how to help spies that had been captured and tortured and interned to be able to reclaim their free thought, to be able to come back to standing for the values of freedom that they originally went into the field with.
Yeah, like our American soldiers tortured into,
Yes.
going back on their oaths and such. Prisoners of war.
Yes.
And they brought them back and deprogrammed
Yes.
them so they could reclaim why they went over there, who they were that went over there. Hey, don't you think it's time you stop putting smoke and vape oil in your lungs? I do too. So guess what I'm doing? I'm using these Zippix toothpicks that are fantastic. You can get your nicotine fix anytime with these without having to get a cigarette or go get a vape or anything. These give you a healthier and more discreet way of getting your fix, like if you're babysitting your 2-year-old granddaughter or you're in a restaurant or the airport and you're starting to flip out. These things really work. They've helped me quite a bit. They're pretty tasty too. They're perfect for sporting events and all the other places you're not supposed to go when you need a cig, you know. They also offer caffeine and B12 toothpicks too. Those are good. I've tried them also. But they've already helped thousands of people, probably tens of thousands of people, to quit smoking, which is all of our goal, right? At least to cut down. And so I'm very happy to say you could ditch the cigarettes, ditch the vape, and get some nicotine-infused toothpicks at zippixtoothpicks.com today. And you'll get 10% off your first order by using the code Roseanne at checkout. Your lungs are going to thank you and me and Zippix. So Mark knew that they had ways to deprogram the minds of people who were severely compartmentalized, right?
Yep.
And didn't he find out also that that information had been buried very deeply in all the government papers?
Yes, it was buried under national security so that they could use it on an espionage level, so they could use it on a military level. And also, it was deliberately suppressed so that people would forget the strength that we have within us, the ability to heal that we have inside, because it's our birthright information. It's basic information that we remember when we look inside ourselves to reclaim our freedom, rather than look outside ourselves to big government and big pharma and big cult, occult religion, or whatever. If we're looking outside ourselves, we're looking the wrong direction. We're giving our power away.
Right.
And these perpetrators that are hell-bent on implementing this new world order only have as much power as we give them or let them steal. And the only reason we're giving it to them is because we forgot. We forgot that we have all the power. We forgot that we have the moral compass. We have the strength of the human spirit. And that was by design. That information was withheld from mental health. It was withheld from the medical community because we have these great healing abilities within us, these great immune systems and a resiliency of body, mind, and spirit. They wanted us to forget all that. That was buried from the education system and from society as a whole.
But, so when Mark rescued you, that's what he used to help you heal, right?
Yes, and people think Mark deprogrammed me, and it's not that he deprogrammed me. He reminded me that it was within myself to be able to heal. And it was that this information being suppressed for 3 generations that has really all of society being so compliant and confused at this moment in time because they forgot what I forgot from the tortures and the repetitiveness and the programming and the trauma, that we have all the power. We have that within us all along. We have the ability to heal. There's no limit to what we can heal.
What did it feel like when you figured that out? When you finally got that and figured that out, what did that feel like?
It's so exciting, and yet it was a reminder of what I really knew as a very small child, because I think children are born with their birthright information. They're born with the knowledge. They have that so much, and then life starts getting structured and gets in the way and takes them further and further from their intuitions and their capabilities and their healing aspects, and they start looking outside themselves. So
they give it all away.
So yeah, so it was kind of like remembering that beauty that I felt inside as a very small child. As my free thought was going away, I remember wishing there was some place in the world where people didn't hurt each other and where people could live, love, and just protect each other. And it took me right back to that. So it was almost a full circle thing, and yet the understanding of that is so empowering, and it's exciting information. I want to remind everybody, just because you've forgotten for 3 generations and it's become autogenic in the brain to look outside of yourself to so-called authority, these self-appointed, self-anointed leaders to tell us how to
That
live our
nobody
lives.
voted for.
Yeah, that nobody voted for. Then that we have it all within, and it's like, come on, everybody, we can remember this, and it doesn't matter. I'm living proof too that the soul is stronger than genetics. We can overcome that genetic encoding and still remember, because that is the strength of who we are. That's who we are inside. That's the life we're intended to live. That's humanity's purpose. It's our innate being, and it's so, in so many ways, it's like reminding everybody, this is our time. This is our time to evolve with the knowledge that's our defense against mind control. It's our time to evolve with the strength of spirit to remember who we are and why we're here.
I remember all the times in my life where I felt defeated and depressed, where I call Cathy up and I'm like, tell me something good. Tell me we're winning. Because I'm like, are there really white hats? I mean, in our government and our intelligence? That's all I always bug you about, because how that must have blown your mind. And I just want America to know too. When you talk about the white hats in our government, it gives me so much hope. So I want them to hear it too. Were you blown away at how many it took and how many there were?
By the time, when I was 30 years old, and Mark lifted my daughter and me right out of the Washington, D.C. swamp, I didn't know good people existed in the world. I really didn't. I had no capacity to think, to trust. I didn't know who Mark was or what he was. I figured he must be a god or an alien or something, something different. I didn't know what he was, except that I saw his pets loved him and trusted him. And there's something very natural when we have a connection with animals like that. Mm-hmm. And he had such a deep connection with his raccoons and his fox and his dogs, and they all loved him. Everybody greeted him. And in my life's experience, people who abuse children abuse animals, and vice versa. They have no regard for life at all. Mm-hmm. And so seeing that the animals could trust Mark was a real eye-opener for me, that, whoa, if they can trust, I can trust. I couldn't think to trust, but I could sense that. And I knew it. It reminded me on the deepest innate level. And so I learned that I could trust Mark at that point. And Mark said he wasn't the only one, that the good people are by far the majority, and that there were many people in intelligence, many people in global intelligence, who were very disturbed at the mind control agenda being used to usher in the New World Order, what was being done to repress humanity's strength of spirit. There's a huge movement of that. And it was like, I think I was the last person to believe that, something like that, because of my life's experience. But I saw it, and it's everywhere. It's massive, it's huge, and we are by far the majority. I mean, it's our nature. It's who we really are as humanity. And Mark reminded me of that. And wow, did I ever see it in my healing process. They all were coming forward. I saw people like William Von Raab, head of U.S. Customs. Everybody can look it up. The internet's scrubbed a bit, just like he was censored from the media from having much voice. Mm-hmm. But he was head of U.S. Customs in the late 80s. And so as quickly as I was healing and writing out memory, Mark was handing it over to his friends in intelligence and law enforcement, people like William Von Raab. And they were investigating and say, yes, this is it, this is true, this is what happened, this is the facts. And so it was being validated by by people like William von Raben. He did everything he could to tell the people that this corruption was going on, what the New World Order was about, how drug and human trafficking was being permitted to pour across our borders under the guise of national security. The same thing that allowed my father to skate, same thing that allowed for him to be freed from any prosecution when I was just a little child. I mean, that was back in the 60s, and already national security was corrupting our courts to allow for child sex trafficking.
Oh, they
to
do it
allow
a
for
million times
pedophilia.
worse now.
Yeah, it is. And you know, and it's still, it's so rooted in the corruption that I have seen develop over the years that it was really healing for me to see people like William von Raab, you know, and so many others in intelligence on Mark's side that were very concerned for humanity and were validating the information as fast as I was, you know, getting it written out, as fast as I was remembering all that I had been tortured to forget.
Yeah, they thought that you were just, I guess you said they just were going to kill you when you turned 30.
Yep.
So they didn't have no regard for the shit they said in front of you.
Right.
They're like, oh, she's not going to live to tell nobody, so it's all right if she hears this, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, they're so stupid. They really are. They're just stupid. Like, they knew that I had a photographic memory because that's
They
how
made that happen.
Yeah, they use it with the trauma, and then they can program speeches. They can program messages that I delivered to and from government leaders. They could program anything in that photographic memory. Well, that photographic memory was still running while they were running their mouths and talking about their plans for us all. So I remembered everything, and they were foolish to have thought that I wouldn't. But they always make mistakes. They always make big mistakes, and that was a huge one. And they thought I wouldn't live. They thought that you know, I would be killed at age 30, because it's another important thing we need to understand about our mind-brain function. As at around age 30, electrochemical changes happen in the brain, and many people who've experienced childhood abuse start remembering it around that age. We see people who have been programmed in MK Ultra that, you know, have been put through Disney and stuff around 30. They break their programming and they're sent off to institutions and come back with their head shaved or Hail Hitler or, you know, whatever. Because it's what happens in our brains at age 30. It's a saving grace. And they weren't going to allow for that to happen with me. So I was to be killed at Bohemian Grove. And it was right at that point of turning age 30 and being sent there that Mark intercepted and actually saved my life. It never occurred to them that somebody like, you know, Mark would be using the information on mind-brain function to free minds instead of control them like they did. They can't think like we do any more than we can think like they do, you know. So they messed up. They messed up, and here I am. I'm still talking. I'm still here. As long as I'm alive, I'm going to be bringing this truth to light, because people need to know it's inexcusable that we're allowing them to meddle in our brilliant minds and lives anymore.
All the things they're doing are inexcusable.
It is. War's inexcusable.
It's
archaic.
so obsolete. There's no need for it at all. But it's just a cover, don't you think? All the war going on upstairs is to hide in them tunnels where they're trafficking them organs, them drugs, them weapons, and them kids and women. It's all bullshit.
It is. It
It's
always
a
has
theater
been.
of bullshit. Yeah.
All the different wars that went on, like Just Cause, when Bush was in, it was Just Cause Noriega, because Noriega wasn't stopping the CIA drug trafficking when they needed him to, because Iran-Contra was really hot and they needed him to lay low, and he didn't do it. So there was a war for that. And then we had other wars that were just part of the drug wars. The CIA's so-called war on drugs was no more than the CIA eliminating their competition while they took over the industry worldwide. That included cocaine and heroin, and, from the poppies. So we've warred for that. The wars are a horrible illusion that traumatizes humanity.
Sent the kids over there for that
Yeah.
comeback with no legs so they could live on the street.
Yeah.
And then you know what I found out in '08 when the bubble popped? Most of the people who lost their houses were the mothers single moms who'd sent their kids over to fight in the war. That disgusted me. That's why I was like, man, if people only knew.
Yeah.
People only knew. But now I just feel like there's no damn excuse for them not to know anymore,
No, it's so archaic, and there's so much truth that's come out. People are realizing it. They don't want to fight in someone else's war, and they don't want to have to war anyway.
Mm-mm.
I mean, look what happened 9/11, how that led everybody into war. That was a trauma on the whole nation. And when it happened, everybody's suggestibility heightened, because that's the way our brains respond to trauma. So when trauma occurs, shut off their media voice, get away from the TV, get out in nature, breathe in the air, think free. That we need to safeguard our free thought at a time like that. But instead, everybody sat glued to their TV. When I say 911, we all see the same image of the plane flying into the tower, because that's what the media showed us over and over and over, repetitive trauma, while telling us war, go to war. We had to go fight for freedom. Yeah, and people did, and it was a massive recruitment.
You want to hear
towards
a
war.
real good one for program breaking? Some biblical scholars of the New Testament, they say that Jesus was born on September 11th, that's the day he was actually born. Have you heard that one?
I've heard a lot of different things, and
That's why they said they do all them bad things on 911 is to make that a bad memory for people. Have you heard that?
It's probable. It makes sense. I mean, it's what they do. There's so many lies. We need to re-examine a lot of things, especially where trauma and war are being perpetuated, because that's against human nature. That's traumatizing us all.
Yeah, because it's like constant trauma too. It's perpetual trauma. If there's not a shooting at a school, then it's at a disco. Then it's this, people getting shot on the street, people pulling people out of cars. Every day, every minute, it's all trauma. So let's talk about healing, because your book, Time to Heal, is a really healing book. And I want you to talk about your healing and how you did it and how you wrote about it in that book.
Well, PTSD Time to Heal is the healing methods that Mark taught me and reminded me. It's what he found buried under national security. It's a very, very thin little workbook.
It's very readable,
and it's not about me, it's about us all. It just reminds everybody the same way that Mark reminded me. He couldn't release that information because as a spook working the highest levels of intelligence and mind sciences, Mark couldn't release the information because he was bound by laws of sedition.
Mm-hmm.
But it was my experience to heal with those methods. And I'm not bound by laws of sedition, so I released it so that everybody can remember. And it's something that applies to us all as we endure trauma. It's something everyone, everywhere can use to reclaim and retain their free thought, to understand their own mind-brain function, to be able to stand strong and stop complying with these unelected, self-appointed, self-anointed leaders. We didn't elect them. There's no reason to be following them.
It's just because they've got the square head. That's why they're all in power, because the square head works on the screen. It isn't even a diversity hire. People say she only got like Kareem, what's her ass? They say, oh, she only got the job because she's a black lesbian. No, it's because she's got a square head. People need to get beyond the race and into the head shapes, because that's the real truth, I think. But yeah, she does have the square head. So does Fauci, so does Schumer, so does Pelosi. And those eyebrows, I mean, they're just the square head. Lindsey Graham, the square head, looks good on screen. But that's just like Frank Zappa called it, TV and media. That's just the front office of entertainment for the Pentagon.
Yeah, well, follow the money. And it goes to the same handful of puppet masters that are in control today. You know, always follow the money. And look at what the main advertisers are on TV is the big pharma. You know, I mean, it's constant, it's repetitive. You know, we need to understand that and just shut it off and get away from it.
Well, you're a great advocate for marijuana, aren't you? And so I'm sure you're going to like enjoy my ad for my THC sponsor, because I want after we do it, we're going to talk about the great benefits of THC fighting mind control, right?
Well, that's why it's been demonized, because it's not conducive to mind control. You can't maintain a population under mind control. It has mind-expanding properties that actually physically open neuron pathways. And they're needing to shut down neuron pathways to keep us subdued rather than open them. But we need to be opening our neuron pathways. The information on the medicinal benefits of cannabis were suppressed under national security and then demonized through their media voice, you know, that it's something so awful. Well, they couldn't maintain the military under mind control if they smoked. So it was considered the most horrible drug. It was the only one that was like strictly forbidden under MK Ultra mind control.
But they liked cocaine, didn't they?
All that. Yeah, everything else is go. But no, you can't. No cannabis, because it promotes free thought, and you cannot maintain someone under compartmentalized memory. You can't maintain somebody under any level of mind manipulation with medical cannabis.
But they don't think we're onto them at all, do they?
They might be catching on to the fact that people are waking up, because they're not complying anymore like they were at first. They're rethinking everything, and they're taking a look at what's really going on. So I think they've got a pretty good clue that people are waking up. The Great Awakening is a very real thing. And there are those of us who have great insight into their methods that are laughing at them because they're making ridiculously foolish mistakes.
Well, and they're also like, it looks like they're going to be, and there's going to be a lot of activation of the mentally ill and the people with the compartmentalized minds that they kind of activate for street theater. Looks like a lot of that's happening.
Well, it's encouraging to me to know that people are onto mind control, because when Mark and I first started speaking out in the early 90s, people had no point of reference for the information, and they certainly do now. People are onto it. When mind control masked as a virus was unleashed on the global population, 2020, to get this new world order put in place, it was supposed to have gone in 2016. But the sheer numbers of people who are awake and aware overrode the rigged electronic algorithm in the voting machines and elected a president to represent we the people, a president that wasn't Hillary Clinton and her new world order. You know, so people are definitely onto it. They realize that 2016, 2020, they went all in with mind control masked as a virus while they blatantly stole elections. And then they made foolish mistakes, like telling us to shelter at home. Well, when you break people's routine patterns, it forces their brain to fire in new ways. It opens neuron pathways. like if you think about it, if you park your car in a different spot, then you have to think, where did I park my car? Instead of just, mechanically going to it. And that's what they did. They needed to shut down people's thinking. They needed to shut down the neuron pathways, but they opened them by breaking routines. And so people, while they were sheltering at home, they noticed their kids were being indoctrinated in the school system. They noticed that the media was lying to us, telling us that violent burning of our livelihoods in the streets was peaceful protests, and people started catching on to things. So by the time they rolled out the next injection, people said no. They stopped complying with their own demise. So people are waking up, and it's causing them to be frantic, and they're stepping up the traumas, which is all the more reason why it's important for us to be having this discussion to let people know, don't comply. We're the majority. We're awake and aware. Nobody told us we were the majority 2016. The media didn't even come up with any contrived polls to tell us that, but we overrode the algorithm anyway. And now there's so many more of us awake and aware, and they're still not telling us. But we know, we see it around us. We see people not complying. We see people reclaiming their compassion and their strength of spirit, reclaiming their joy, reclaiming their freedom to live their life the way it's intended to be.
Yeah, instead of like living as a cyborg who just parrots talking points from the CIA all day long.
Yeah, we see the ones that are still stuck in that parrot mode, the ones that obviously are still watching the mainstream media voice of these puppet masters.
Oh my God, my whole family, they just can't.
Yeah,
they got to believe it, I guess.
They just switch from
they
one
gotta
narrative
believe
to the
Biden
next.
got 81 million votes.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's so stupid.
I mean, that's just one of them.
But they're starting to realize that the media is totally controlled and that repetition is the most basic form of mind control. There's a lot of meme things going around out there showing where every single mainstream media is parroting the same words. A
threat to our democracy. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
I'd call that a threat to they're trying to act to get their Emmy, saying the same shit in a different way. I'd call that.
Yeah, they do.
I'm trying to get an Emmy. I do get a laugh out of it. But, something that's important about healing from mind control, you were telling me, and I know it to be true, is journaling, right? And that's in your book. PTSD. To heal.
It's a real simple brain trick that everybody can use to reclaim and retain their free thought, to think beyond the trauma, to be able to rise above the storm, so to speak, to get a clear path forward. And that's to pick up a pen. And Mark taught me that. That's how I started writing out the memory I'd been tortured to forget, all that repressed memory. And it starts with moving a pen. Because when you move a pen, it requires the logic part of the brain, the critical analysis part of the brain to move that pen. So it takes that emotionally incomprehensible trauma, shifts it over to logic to be written out on paper where it's then consciously seen, and all of a sudden we're healing on numerous levels all at once. Psychiatric, psychological, emotional, spiritual. It's all coming around just with one little brain hack, one little brain trick of moving that pen. It's so important that if we could put writing by hand with that pen and paper back in the school systems, it'd stop the indoctrination of children. Because they would be shifting that information over to critical analysis. They'd be processing it consciously, thinking it through. It's a whole different brain function than just being indoctrinated with repetitive bombardment of
you
information.
saw, you were, owned, I guess is the word, I can't think of another word. You were enslaved to people who changed our school system, right?
Yeah.
They ruined
Yeah.
our school system.
Yeah.
Talk about that, the whole education of, wasn't it called whole education?
Global education. Yeah, it was my owner in MK Ultra Mind Control, my self-appointed owner, U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd, who was head of Senate Appropriations. He was in Senate for over 50 years, you know, making sure that nobody voted in term limits, you know, because he wanted to stay there like forever. But he made the states dependent on federal funding for the school systems. And once they became dependent on that, then they took over the school system with the global education program that picked up really where Hitler's youth education left off. And it's an indoctrination and a repetition that is not applicable knowledge. It's just programmed information where all creativity is lost and
Critical thought.
yeah, all that. It was deliberately taken out of the school system through what was termed global education, Goals 2000, America 2000, and now they renamed it Common Core. You know, so that's what's in our school system right now, and we need to realize that it's a very deliberate indoctrination method. And we look back and we're going to find out that Bill Bennett put it in during the Reagan-Bush administration, along with Lamar Alexander. Lamar Alexander was the education secretary who was heavily involved in Satanism, and Bill Bennett was heavily involved on the Jesuit end. No difference between the two. Both were about trauma and mind control. They were both about repetition and indoctrinating the children. So it's been deliberately put into the school system. It was tried and proven in the state of Michigan while I was growing up when George Romney, who was governor at the time, Mitt Romney's father, was bringing it into the school system in Michigan back in those days, was the so-called leader in education in the nation. They weren't the leader in education, they were the leader in indoctrination. And they wanted to get the computers into the school systems as fast as possible because typing does not do the same thing in the brain. It doesn't shift information over to critical analysis the way moving a pen does. So we've got to get that writing by hand back into the school system and get the kids away from the devices, get them thinking again and questioning and reasoning and not being indoctrinated by an agenda that is intended to have them marching to new world orders.
Man, it's the Fourth Reich.
This is all detailed too in my 1995 testimony for Congress, Transformation of America. It's comprised of all the information that I wrote out that was validated by the clean members of intelligence and law enforcement who were very disturbed over what was going on. And there's a lot of information in there that shows the roots of really what we're experiencing today. But national security was invoked on that testimony. And national security meant that it repressed the information from mainstream media. And people really needed this information because knowledge is our defense against mind control. They didn't want people to have it. So national security was invoked on it. But I encourage everybody to look into it, and they're going to find out that not only has it come true over time, but it gives us an understanding of what's unfolding today.
Well, doesn't NAFTA, talk about NAFTA, because you were working with the Clintons, or you were somehow involved with the whole Clinton NAFTA deal right? You knew about that.
Yeah, the groundwork for NAFTA was rooted in drug and human trafficking across our borders. And even though they weren't blatantly open like they are today, national security was being invoked. It actually had them open even back then. And in the late 70s, Senator Byrd, as my owner, decided that I needed more traumatization and sent me to the backwoods of Louisiana, where I was traumatized by a cult serial killer, CIA assassin, Wayne Cox, who also worked mercenary operations, and happened to have Roger Clinton, Bill Clinton's half-brother, in his coven at that time. And they were working the CIA drug ops back then, the infamous Mina Airport cocaine operations were already in place, and Bill Clinton was already working with the CIA ops at that time. So I saw some of the groundwork of NAFTA, which was the groundwork for the New World Order, and it involved their funding mechanism of drug and human trafficking across open borders. Bill Clinton was just going in as Attorney General back then. He wasn't even governor of Arkansas yet, and he certainly wasn't placed as president. But you'll notice in my 1995 testimony in Transformation of America, it had been detailed out who was going to be placed in the office of president until the New World Order was to be ushered in by Hillary 2016. So it was going to be kept in the Bush-Clinton dynasties. George Bush blatantly said that when people became disillusioned with Democrats leading them into the New World Order, became disillusioned with Republicans leading them in, that Bill Clinton as a Democrat would be put in. So it was just, it's been an illusion.
He was the business-friendly Democrat.
Yeah, they were.
Because he was a Republican.
Yeah, and back when Mark and I were first speaking out, and I was talking about the friendship between the Bushes and the Clintons, people didn't they thought they were, really politically different. They weren't. They were both all about the New World Order. The groundwork for NAFTA went into place, and then NAFTA was ushered in by the Bush-Clinton dynasties, and that was as a setup for the New World Order. So
isn't it terrible that they say 85,000 children or more are just missing?
Yeah.
Since they came across the border.
Yeah, that's what they're counting. That's what they know. And the drug and human trafficking has been going on my whole life. I was used in human trafficking, black ops, even as a little toddler. I was used as in the blackmail operations that they had. The Epstein Island of its time was up at Mackinac Island, Michigan, where George Romney was governor, and they were bringing in this groundwork for the New World Order and using blackmail for ushering it in. So it's been going on my whole life, and I've seen it happening. And when the border was finally closed, I was so relieved. What President Trump did to expose the human trafficking, the child sex trafficking, the mind control, the horrors, the blackmail ops. It's so amazing to have seen someone do that. So when they stole elections 2020, the first thing they did was fling that border back open. And I was devastated. I was so devastated to see that happening that I picked up that pen and paper and I started writing. I vented, I wrote poems. And as I was writing to keep myself logical and not falling into that dark pit of negativity for what was being done to the children and what was being done to the global population, it helped me to be able to maintain my free thought, to be able to see solutions ahead to be able to pick up that pen, because when I would write out, and I encourage everybody everywhere to do it, write out your fear, write out your trauma, write out what's immobilizing you, write out what's so discouraging, and
That's why in my act I say write out those suicide letters.
Yes, I know. I love that that joke in there, because it's so true. It helps. And I always say add a solution. And I spell it with a SOUL, because if you add a solution, then you're lifting yourself out of that dark pit of negativity that you've been writing. And when you add a solution, it forces the brain to fire in new ways. It opens more neuron pathways again, lifts you above the storm, gives you that clear path forward. And it's really important to add that that solution at a time like that. And another way of, like as you're saying with writing those letters, it's just so funny. It gets people to laugh, and it helps them to see beyond the trauma too. The laughter helps bring people there, and it's so important what you do in helping people see truth, deal with it, cope with it, and rise above it. So we can move forward.
Yeah. I think we're ready to move forward together, because this shit ain't working.
Yeah.
It's going to get ugly if we don't, right?
Yeah, this is our time. It's our time to shine. People are doing it, and we just gather our strength of spirit. It's what they fear the most. We get it with our free thought, and collectively, they can't control us. They only have as much power as we give them or let them steal.
Yeah, and
No
they
more.
assume it for themselves, too. So it's like the emperor's naked. So you just want to go, hey, buddy, you're naked. You need to go home and put on your pants and zip them up all the way and stay in your house.
Yeah, and leave our kids alone.
And just leave us alone. Leave people alone. Stop trying to manipulate them, steal from them, prey on them, whatever the hell. Just stay in your house and be with yourself and see how much you love that.
Yeah.
How terrified would they have to be if they had to stay in their house, mind their own goddamn business, and deal with their own shit? That'd be worse than hell to them, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I don't understand them anyway. I sure can't think. Even having been around them, I don't get it. It's like, how much power and control does anybody, how much money does anybody need? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, they're hoarders.
They're
so they can't get
greedy.
enough. They got to have like 800 little silver elephants until there's no room to even walk in their house.
Yeah.
That kind of crazy shit.
It's so ridiculous. It's inexcusable. Yeah.
But look how they had Aquino in the fucking army or some shit. They got a devil worshiper. I saw him on Phil Donahue, and I was aghast. A Satanist was like in our intelligence. And he had the great big old Satan mustache and everything. The Church of Set, or whatever it's called, the Satan worshippers in the military. What the fuck? What?
Yeah. He was all about MK Ultra mind control and using trauma as a basis of it. Going into the trauma of Satanism is horrific. Sexual abuse of a child is horrific. Blood trauma is absolutely horrific. And he studied the Hitler-Himmler research and wanted to be able to apply it. So he was my primary mind control programmer throughout my MK Ultra victimization. And that was as appointed by Byrd, to subject me to more trauma and to that kind of mind manipulation that was used on our military, and then also used on children, because he was caught up in the Presidio daycare scandal, the McMartin. He was on the McMartin board to cover up the crimes on top of everything else in Marin County. Absolutely horrific what was allowed. And the little children were saying, why does the FBI protect Aquino? Because the FBI has been complicit in the New World Order all along. The FBI has been complicit in covering up child sex trafficking for a long time. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was set up in the FBI building through Senator Byrd. He had actually had an office in the FBI building to set that up as a catch-net operation for the children who were trafficked. And the FBI came in and just made sure that Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino could just stay free in spite of how many crimes he was caught up in, just like they cover up for the Clintons, and the rest of these perpetrators.
They covered up for him forever too.
Yeah. Wherever the Epstein Island of the time is, to make sure that the traumas continue for mind control purposes. So,
How do you see the positive future?
People are onto it. They're seeing it. They already know now about the Epstein Island. I lived my whole life with that kind of thing going on at Mackinac Island, Michigan, and Bohemian Grove, and throughout the Caribbean, in the Organization of American States that Madeleine Albright, Hillary Clinton's mentor, one of her mentors, had set up for child sex trafficking and everything. But people are seeing it. They realize what's going on. They're disgusted that there is no justice. They're disgusted that it's been covered up to the extent that they have. And they're seeing how the media is complicit in it. So, people are onto it. They're not fooled anymore. That
is huge, isn't it?
It is.
Nothing else could be bigger than that.
I know.
But I just like saying it's great that people are more awake, but it's so great when you tell that story about the white hats. That's heartening that there are good people.
Well, look at you.
Too. Well, I mean in the intelligence and
that too,
CIA and all of it. FBI.
You give voice to it. You have the voice, way more voice than the controlled media's got anymore. So people are understanding more of what is going on in the world, what in the world is really happening, and seeing that there are good people everywhere, that there are white hats, and they're doing all they can. They don't have any more, mainstream media voice than any of the rest of us do. But we're getting that truth out there because of podcasts like yours and exactly what you're doing. And I'm going to keep speaking out. I'm going to keep writing my blogs.
You started all this. You started this whole, you and Mark, you started the whole crack in the whole shell 35 years ago.
35 years ago, before anybody really had a point of reference for it. But, because I healed from within myself, I was able to bring that information out without expecting the people to reinforce it for me or tell me that it was real or tell me, I wasn't looking for confirmation. I wasn't looking for anything other than to be able to raise awareness. And people weren't always kind, but that was okay because that was sweet in its own way that they were so such good people that they couldn't think to look for that kind of criminal activity, So I considered it seeds of truth planted, and that eventually, they're going to see it. Truth never goes away. It's going to be in their face. Boy, is it now. They're seeing it now. It has come to light, and awareness is the first step towards positive, necessary change. So here we are. Here we go.
So we are.
It's our time.
Going big.
Yep.
Going big. Yeah, I feel it's the time.
Yeah.
The time is always now. It's always now.
Time
Did you
to
notice
heal.
that?
Yeah.
Time to heal.
Yeah.
But it's always now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's so many miracles. There's so much beauty around us. We need to get out in nature, feel the earth beneath our feet, feel the grass, go barefoot.
Yeah, you
hug
need
a
some
tree.
CO2.
Breathe the
some
air.
Oxygen,
Deep breaths. Take that in. Feel the sun on your skin. Feel again. Because not only have we been dumbed down, we've been numbed down. And we need to learn to feel again, reclaim our compassion, reclaim our freedoms, and reclaim the beauty and miracles and joy that life has. It's everywhere.
So much fun, isn't it?
It is.
When you're out from underneath that blanket of fog and darkness. Hell, everything, even the smallest thing is fun.
Yeah.
Well, I love you so much, and I love sharing this podcast with you. And hope it does both or all 5 of those things. Plus, you get to be, I forgot to say, you're a living example of healing, and that's why everyone calls you a saint. Saint Cathy.
I don't know about that, but I am definitely an example of healing. And, it's so funny because they want to censor that and say, oh, no, healing's not possible. Yes, it is. We don't have to maintain a victim mentality anymore. It's within us all to heal. We were born with it all along. This is our time. It's our time to heal, our time to shine.
Ditto what she said. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, you see,